The inns in Jerusalem were filled with visitors from the surrounding area. There was a festive atmosphere among the crowd that came to celebrate the feast of the Passover. Not quite as festive as a New Orleans Mardi Gras, but people meeting and greeting friends as they jostled in the markets and streets. There was a heightened air of anticipation that energized the crowd after the unscheduled parade of palm waving for the newest celebrity in town. And celebrity is what they followed and wanted. The curious wanted to see Jesus. There were some visitors identified as Greeks who recognized a man named Philip, whom they may have encountered earlier in the market. That encounter led them to believe he knew this celebrity, Jesus. They stopped Philip and asked if he could arrange an interview with his friend, or at least a sighting. Philip had to go through the channels and found and told Andrew about the request. Together, Philip and Andrew arranged a meeting with Jesus. How many of you have read your Sunday devotion already? Okay, so if you've read it, you know that I just read the beginning of that devotion, right out of the Ashes to Fire book, which I brought with me today. So I didn't have it last week and I needed it for something. So I have it this week and I probably won't need it. But that's okay. I really, really like the way that this is set up. I mean, this is actually how I read almost everything I read. I have this vision of what's happening as I'm reading. I don't know how many of you are visual learners, but I am, well, actually I just finished last night in this course of study thing so that I can be a substitute teacher here in Gilchrist County. And one of the things that they push is that the majority of people, 50%, maybe even 40%. I did that just for those of you who caught that a couple weeks ago when I said that. But a lot of people, the majority of people, are visual learners. How do we teach? Not visually. We use auditory, right? We're auditory teachers, but we're visual learners. It's kind of weird how that works. That's partly, I said that honestly so that I can say this. That's partly why I do the videos. Because I'm hoping that those videos will help you visually internalize a little bit about what the Scripture is saying to us on that day. Today, my wife, who I told you already, absolutely hates Mr. Bean, today made a comment about this is where Mr. Bean would be. So it works for her, even though she doesn't necessarily claim to be a visual learner. When I'm reading anything, I'm always visualizing what I'm reading. I'm always putting a story together in my head, and usually I have it all figured out long before I ever get there. Most of the time it's wrong, but I have it all figured out. I've seen the story come to play as it's going to play out, and then I read it. Does anybody else do that? Okay. So today's reading started out by painting a picture for me. And the picture was, there is this meeting that is about to take place. Jesus has come to town. And upon his arrival, the people gave him a wonderful, wonderful entrance. Right? We talked about that a little bit. We're going to talk about it more next week. Then, while Jesus is mingling with the people, probably a lot like we do each Sunday morning, he's talking to people, he's bumping into people, he's just kind of getting to know the family and be a part of the family and what's going on, right? While that's happening, there are a couple people from Greece, we're told, who see Philip. I almost said Peter. And I told you already, I preached a whole sermon one time on the wrong guy. So, they see Philip, and they have already put Philip together with Jesus. You ever find somebody in your life that when they come around, you just know they are somebody you want to be close to because of their faith, or because of their knowledge, or because of something that they do or they know that you connect to. You ever known anybody like that? I have. I've known a lot of people like that. And I'm really excited when it's somebody that has to do with their faith. When there's somebody that is so focused on living for Jesus that when they walk into the room or into an area, you just kind of feel the presence of God come with them. I'm always blown away by that. And I've always asked God, please make me a man like that. Make me somebody that when I show up, you show up ahead of me. You prepare the way. You take control. You fill that place. They don't need to see me. They need to see you. Well, that's kind of how this is. And these people see Philip. The other thing that I think is funny is, I don't know if you've heard this before or if you've read this, but if you realize in the beginning of the Gospels, it's always Andrew that does the introductions. Andrew's the guy that always introduces each person to the next leader. And so Philip goes and finds Andrew. Makes sense when Andrew's the guy that does the introductions, right? And so he goes and he finds Andrew and he says, Andrew, what are we going to do? These guys won't leave me alone. They really want to meet Jesus, and I don't feel right going up to Jesus and saying, hey, these guys, I don't even know their name. All I know is they're from Greece. I assume that's right because John didn't give us their names. He just says 2 guys from Greece. Right? I bet maybe there was more to the story. See, again, my brain starts moving. And I put names on those guys, and I'm like all about what they're doing and how they're dressed, and yeah, that doesn't really matter, does it? It doesn't really matter. But the writer has painted this picture in my brain. Let the Scriptures paint pictures in your brain. Let the Scriptures move you in a way that you become a part of them. Then you'll find that you start living Jesus all the time, because it's part of who you are. When we just put it out here where we hear it, it's kind of like the new song that the song leader introduces at church. Everybody just kind of goes, and all I need, you're all... Right? We don't get it. It just kind of happens and goes. But if you really connect to it, what happens? You don't even need the song. You don't even need the song leader. You just got it. And it's there, and it becomes a part of you. And I can tell, and I know Krista and I have had this conversation, we can tell those of you who are into the service, because you disconnect from here, and you like move into another plane, and you're worshiping God. You're just worshiping God for all you are. And that's the key. So, let the Scriptures paint those pictures. Philip finds Andrew. Andrew finds Jesus. And he takes Philip along with him. And he tells Jesus about these 2 guys that want to meet with Jesus. So, Jesus says, sure, I'll meet with them. All this works for me because this is how we all meet people. Isn't it? I mean, some of us are really outgoing and we can just make conversation with anyone. But most people need to have an introduction before they have a conversation. Now, I know most of you guys know Barb and Barb can talk to anybody about anything all the time, but I always wait till Barb makes that inroad and then she can kind of bring me along. Yeah, right. Yeah, right. It's kind of the other way sometimes until Barb does make that inroad, and then I can't ever get a word in because she's connected. Again, it's like that where you connect to God. When you connect to people, it's the same kind of feeling. It's the same kind of interaction. You get focused. Now, I'm really bad at that. I'm really bad at that. I'll be focused on a conversation or what I'm doing or where I'm going, and there can be all kinds of stuff going on all over here, and I miss it all because I'm focused. I'm going to make another, it's more of an apology than a confession on this time. I need to apologize publicly to Barb because I do that to her all the time. And I leave her out. She's there and she'd like to be part of a conversation or part of what's going on, and instead I just kind of run off and I'm there. And she's usually sitting at a table waiting for somebody just to say something because she needs an introduction. Like most people need an introduction. Okay, so these guys from Greece, they're introduced to Jesus and he starts teaching. As he often does, he starts teaching because he has an audience that wants to hear. And it goes something like this. The hour has come for the Son of Man to be glorified. Very truly I tell you, unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it remains a single grain. But if it dies, it bears much fruit. These guys came from Greece for a Passover celebration. There was this huge fanfare when Jesus came into town. They really want to meet the celebrity Jesus. And he starts talking to them about gardening. What? What? We all know that if you plant a seed, it brings forth a harvest. And if you don't plant a seed, nothing happens. Right? Barbara and I were out in the garden yesterday, and there is some things coming up through the ground. We're all excited about that. There's some other things that we think should be coming up through the ground that are not. We're not so excited about those. So, but we know that we have to plant before we'll have a harvest. Why does Jesus kick into a planting sermon when he has such a great crowd to minister to? He's obviously lost his mind, right? I mean, he could use this time, this opportunity to teach people about the kingdom of God. He could teach people about their need to change. He could teach people about how they're going the wrong way, and if they'll just turn around, they'll find truth. It's a great opportunity. And he obviously knows who's listening and what they need to hear. Right? But Jesus isn't like that. Our judgmental way of living tends to make us want to put people in their spot when they're listening to us. Don't they? Don't we feel that way? Don't we feel like we need to challenge people when we're talking to them? I mean, maybe not your best friend, maybe not the person you're just hanging out with, but when you have a captive audience, don't you feel like you really need to do something to make a difference? Why do you think teachers feel like they do when they're teaching? They're trying to mold the people that are listening, hopefully for the better. Why do you think preachers are the way they are? Because when they're up here and they're preaching, they get this idea that they might be able to lead somebody down the right road. Amen. I've never gone to the pulpit and talked about planting seeds. Never talked about how to plow a garden. Part of that's because I'm not much of a farmer or a gardener. But the point is, Jesus doesn't do it that way. Don't we as the church get the stigma attached to us that we are hypocritical, judgmental? Don't we, or don't most people think that we think we're better than them? I mean, if I'm wrong about this, somebody meet me after the service today and explain to me why the church all of the church buildings in this area and across the nation, all around the world, are not completely packed out each week. Because if we're loving, caring people who want the best for all of God's creation, I think people would be knocking down the doors to get inside here and be a part of this. See, Jesus turns what they all thought was going to be a great time of teaching into a lesson they don't want to hear. Sound familiar? It really does. He actually tells them that if they really want to understand how a follower grows close to him, then they're going to have to understand that they need to die. They need to die. But they want to live. They want to do incredible things. They want to show everyone that they are good followers and that they will uphold the laws of the church. That's why this is such a big deal to them. It's not about them, and they are hearing Jesus tell them that unless they realize this truth, they will never really make a difference. I really want you to hear that. It's not about you. It's not about me. And unless we learn to put our own desires, our own visions, our own ideas in the ground, we're never really going to make a difference. It's all about what God's doing. It's all about who Jesus was. It's all about how he lives in us and changes us. And until we get that, we're really never going to make a difference for him. I think that's pretty big. Then he says, those who love their life lose it, and those who hate their life in this world will keep it for eternal life. Whoever serves me must follow me, and where I am, there will my servant be also. Whoever serves me, the Father will honor. Doesn't Jesus tell us that we should love others as we love ourselves? That's in Matthew 19:19 if you want to check it out. If this is so, then how can we love others well if we don't love ourselves? Seems like it doesn't really work, right? He's actually telling us in both of these passages that we are to put others before our wants and needs. We're not supposed to think we are better than anyone else, and we're not supposed to be on God patrol. See, God draws men to himself. If we will act as if he is in our lives and love others as he has loved us, then I believe that means unconditionally love others, no matter what they're doing, no matter where they are. Love them. Then he'll make the difference by drawing them to him. I know that if there are conditions on receiving God's love, I know there's 100% chance that I'm going to miss it. I know it. Because I never quite get it. I'm always making some wrong choice. Anybody out there like me at all? I mean, there's times when I just think I got it, and then I turn around and realize I really missed it. So I've decided not to hold others accountable for their actions. And I've decided to let God be the judge, because I'm not worthy to judge anyone in his court. It's pretty big stuff. And it's pretty hard to do. Because you see, I was kind of raised in a church. Even though I wasn't by my parents, my wife and I got married early and we made a commitment to be in the church. And so a lot of church people had a lot of very big influences on us. And because of those influences, I developed this idea of what a Christian looks like, what a follower of Christ looks like, and how they act, and how they talk, and what they do, and where they go. I developed this because I was in the right place. I was in church. I was around other followers of Christ. Isn't that a good thing? Sure it is. But because of what I developed in my brain that said this is how people look, act, speak, do when they're followers of Christ, anybody that didn't fall in those categories must not be a follower of Christ, must not know anything about Jesus. I've told you that I read a lot. And I've been reading a lot. And I've been reading books that are really challenging my way of thinking. And what I've found is that when I have these preconceived ideas, what I'm really doing is I'm saying, okay, so this group of people are fine. And that group of people have absolutely no chance. Unless I go into their place and I tell them they're going to hell. How well does that work? I mean, I went through that phase, and I know I shared some of this. I went through that phase where when I went through the grocery store, the little girl, a real nice girl, walking, very nice, talking to me, bringing everything out, getting ready to bag up my groceries, and I said, do you know Jesus? She would look at me like, what? What's that have to do with groceries? Well, if you don't know Jesus, you're going to hell, and I really don't want you to go to hell. And she says, yeah, well, here's your groceries. Right? She doesn't say, oh, you know what, I get off at 5, and I'd really like to talk to you about how I can not go to hell. She doesn't say that because she feels like I've already judged her, I've already put her in that category, and she can't make it. So instead, I've chosen to just become a loving servant of God who reaches out to people in love. And as they get to know me, I hope they see Jesus. And if they see Jesus, maybe they'll want some of him. Because of the way they see me treat them. Because of the way they see me worship him. Because of the things in my life that show them that I am not this hypocritical, judgmental person who is just trying to put them in their place. I think that's what Jesus is doing. He's saying to them, if you want to produce for God, you have to learn to die to your needs. So, Jesus lets things play out the way they're planned, even though he knows that he could stop it. All right? What's happened here is Jesus has just had a conversation with not just the Greek guys, but everybody. I really want to put names on those guys. I would feel so much better if I could call them a couple different names instead of the Greek guys. The scriptures won't let me do that, so I'm chasing a rabbit there. I'm sorry. So he's had this conversation with them and this whole crowd of people that want to hear the truth. And he tells them, you must die if you want to live right, if you want to produce a harvest. And then he says, I could probably get away with not going through this, but this is what I'm here for. This is the day I came for. And he's determined to go through with the plan. The plan offers salvation to all mankind, all people. Wait a minute. If you're not a follower of Christ, then you must be out here where you're not a follower of Christ, right? And as a not a follower of Christ, then I thought you can't go to heaven. Well, you can't. But who are we to judge? Because God has a plan. And He's using us to create a way for people to find Him. We lift up Jesus just as He lifted Himself up, or allowed Himself to be lifted up. He's determined to provide a way of salvation for all mankind. How determined are you? How far would you go to see someone you love find Christ as their Savior? How much would you lay down if it would cause someone else to pick up following Jesus? Okay, let me ask this question again. How far would you go to see someone who hates you find Christ as their Savior? Or maybe, how far would you go to see someone who lives an alternative lifestyle that makes you uncomfortable find Jesus? How far would you go? You see, we didn't really get to pick who we love if we're really going to be following Jesus. We don't get to pick that. He says that unless a grain of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it will not produce. But if it dies, it produces many times over. See, I plant a seed of corn, and a stalk comes up and corn comes off of it, right? And we eat corn off of that stalk, and we save some of those kernels. We put them back in the ground, and we get more. And it keeps on happening. So it keeps producing over and over and over. Do you want to produce for God? Do you want to make a difference for Jesus? If so, then it's time for us to lay our lives down and let Jesus use us to reach out to those who are lost. It's time for us to do what we need to do to make people who do not know the love we know, the love that comes from God, see that they matter more to us than we do to ourselves. It's time for us to make people feel comfortable around us, even if they do not live as we think they should. So they might see Jesus, or the truth of Jesus, when they see us. Do you get that? It's a tough way. It's very different than what we are made to live. It's very different than the way we're raised to live. We're raised to live comfortable and safe. And Jesus is saying, no. If you want to change somebody's life, you need to reach into their life. Not just tell them what's wrong, but get to know them. Love them. And let Jesus use you to draw them to Him. I'm really worried that we don't get that. And I think that a lot of the reason that I worry about that is because working with teenagers for a long time, you kind of program yourself to get into their life. And it was really tough for me to do that the last 10 years. When you hit 35-ish, it starts to happen where you just really don't relate so much to teenagers anymore. I know that's hard for most of you to believe, but it's true. And when I hit 40, I started questioning, God, am I really even making a difference with these teenagers? And then every year went by, and every year I stayed in youth ministry, and I got to tell you, I loved it. I loved it. I loved being a part of what was going on with the teenagers. I loved that they kept me thinking about what was happening in the culture. I may have said this before, but I'm going to say it again. All of us who think that we get to create culture, unless we're under 19, we don't. They create the culture we live in. We just like to think we're in charge of it. If you don't think I'm right, go watch TV and look at the commercials. See who those go to. See who they're targeting. Because they're not targeting 40-something. They're not. They're targeting actually 10, 11, 12, maybe 14, 15. That's about as high as it goes most of the time. They create the culture, and we live in it. So here's the point. I trained myself to stay relevant to the culture. As I watched all of the older people around me, older people starting at age 20 or 35, like I said, get older and disconnect from the culture and become their group of people that were doing the right thing, going to church, hearing the truth, living their truth, and telling people about Jesus. Sounds right. But they were not engaged in the culture. They were not engaged with the people they were trying to reach. They were staying back here and trying to reach and tell them over here. It's not how it works. We have to get involved. We have to die to ourselves if we really want to make a difference for Jesus. So will you join me as we prepare for Resurrection Sunday in just 2 weeks? Will you help me fill this place with people who want and need to know this love? It's time for us to really get serious about reaching people. We can no longer live with the us for and no more attitude. We cannot continue to judge people and put them into categories that will keep them at arm's length so we can be safe. It's time for us to die. It's time for us to get serious about who Jesus has asked us to become. I challenge each of you today to get out of your comfort zone and get busy loving people for Jesus. Please stand with me and let's get ready to pray. If you don't know this love, these altars are open. If you need help loving, these altars are open. If you struggle with how you treat others, these altars are open. If you carry a burden and you need to lay it down, these altars are open. These altars are open for all who want to come this morning. Let's make today count. Let's make today the day that changed everything here at the Trenton Community Nazarene Church. The Spirit is here, and we want to be true to His leading. Thanking you for your word. Thanking you for the challenge that you have given us to fall away from our own desires and to grow into your desires. Help us, God, to understand why we need to put off who we are so we can become more like you. And Lord, I know every one of us has somebody in our mind, in our thoughts, that we could reach out and show them your love by becoming a part of who they are. So God, I ask that you would just make that so real that we cannot do anything but live for you in that situation and in every situation. Lord, if there's one here that doesn't understand your love, at least to the point of knowing you, I pray you draw them into that love. If there's one here, Lord, that needs help loving somebody else because of decisions that have been made or because of lifestyle or whatever, God, I pray that you would help them love as you would love. Lord, I pray that you would always keep the realization that you loved us even as we were still sinners. And you were willing to die for us while we were ignorant to you. Keep that fresh in our minds, Lord, so that we can learn to let you live through us to make a difference. Lord, I pray that you would build the Spirit throughout this church, throughout this community, and throughout our lives as we give you praise, as we seek your love and your joy and your peace.